Welcome back to the Breakout CEO. I'm Jeff Holman, and I'm the host of the podcast here. Really excited today to have Alex Burdge on the podcast with me. I've known Alex for, it's been 4 or 5 years now, I think. We've been doing some work together. I've been following your company and just love getting to know you. Alex is the CEO of Shyft Global and involved in lots of other stuff, I think, too. So we can get into some of that. But Shyft is the crossroads, as I understand it, between design and logistics. And that's where Alex is making the magic happen. So Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's such a good time we were just catching up a little bit from just before we started the recording, and it's good to hear things are going well for you and your family and your kids. But I wanted to start off with maybe one question that I try to ask all the CEOs that I'm working with here. And that is, you're a busy guy. You got family, you got work, you got stuff, you got successes, you got some challenges. What is it that motivates you from day to keep doing what you're doing?
That's a good question. For me, it's probably the drive to create. Yeah, it's quite interesting as you go through your career, you mold around new kind of ideologies and you learn what really makes you tick and what doesn't, and what you thought maybe did and then no longer does. And it's an interesting, and I'm of course still in the middle of that process, but I think what I've learned so far is that money is something that's great for all of us, but it loses its efficacy pretty quickly if it isn't surrounded by the deeper kind of purpose. And for me, I found that's taking chaos and creating order, or taking a problem and creating a solution, and doing it with people that I love to be around and love to spend time with. And so my pursuit with Shyft has, amongst other things, been largely centered around that idea of, can I build a team of people that inspire me, and can we do cool things together that create order, that create opportunity, that create value. And I think therein is the fun in the journey and the challenge.
Yeah, I love that. Working with innovators, and I think that's how we got together, is some of the things that you were just describing there. Just creating things, working with people who create stuff, bringing things from here into the real world is such a cool thing to watch and be a part of. I also want to say, because Alex, you and I think we have a really good working relationship. When I asked that question, I didn't give that to you beforehand. I just absolutely love that you paused before you answered it, because it's a reflection of the Alex I know. You're an extremely thoughtful guy. And somebody one time said to me, I was in a meeting somewhere sometime, and I had this, what I felt like was an extended pause. And somebody said, you know what? I love pauses, because that's when you know the magic is happening. Like the wheels are turning and you're getting like the best answer possible. So I love that you had that pause there, because you were really giving it some thought to answer that the way you did. So I don't know why
Well,
I'm
thank
calling
you.
that out, but just part of my
No,
observation, I guess.
that's
Yeah.
actually great, because I think being in a setting like this before, there are some settings where people don't like that. And it
Oh,
and it meaning that it makes a host or something uncomfortable, and then it's that you don't get a chance to really process. And so I love that you embrace that. That makes it a lot easier to be a part
yeah.
of your show. So
Yeah, no, take as many pauses as you need. Not a problem. My wife, if I let you on a little secret, my wife thinks I'm sometimes maybe too eager to create awkward silence in groups just to see what
yeah.
happens.
Yep.
She's like,
I
Jeff, you got to
appreciate
laugh.
that.
When you tell a joke, you've got to laugh so people know it's a joke. I'm like,
Yeah.
no. Anyway,
I love it.
anyway. Yeah, no, I love the innovation, the creation side of things. I think that's, unless we lose that, I think that's really innate in all of us. We're just born to create. And so that's a thread that I think really connects us universally, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah. So with that said, tell us a little bit about the things that you've created, whether that's Shyft or some of the stuff leading up to Shyft. What your efforts to create, what have they led to so far? Where are you at?
Yeah. So professionally speaking, Shyft has been the lion's share of my career. So we've been doing Shyft now for 8 years. We bootstrapped the company, and it continues to snowball on itself in the sense that it evolves and becomes its own next chapter. It started out as almost an experiment of, how many months, the kind of visceral memory of how many months could we could we realistically pay our $6,000 overhead? That's really how the mentality started. And it's continued to evolve into, oh, yeah, I could see myself doing this for another 3 years or another 5 years. Prior to that, I'd launched some companies that aren't noteworthy, that aren't worth talking about, but I definitely had the bug and have always tried to seed ideas, whether it was wallets or towels or as a kid, repackaging trading cards and selling them on the street or whatever it was. But Shyft has really been the mainstay. Now, within that, I've had the privilege of working with some cool people on side ventures, launching a kids graphic novel escape room with some of the creators of Tuttle Twins, helping launch some other things with some other really inspiring people. But those are all, again, ancillary to the core at this point, which is to keep my head down and keep building Shyft. And I'd say that's the majority. And Shyft, to answer the second part of your question, Shyft is really this machine that it takes ideas and delivers them to people's doorstep. So everything in between that process, we design products, we have teams in 4 different countries and offices in those countries that we help to find and manage the factories, negotiate pricing, quality, logistics, and get it delivered on time where you need it. And so we've had the privilege of working with some really cool brands and retailers, and that's what fills our cup day to day, is being able to do that.
And who's on your team? You've got a pretty solid team over there. Who are a few of the maybe players that you rely on a lot throughout this process?
Yeah, most notably is my business partner and my father, Mark. He and I bootstrapped this together, and it's been just a real privilege to have this chapter together. Probably not, hopefully, the last chapter of things that he does, but probably one of the more intense final chapters of his working career, that we could work together for the better part of a decade and probably several more years. So he's extremely impactful and capable and just such a gift to our business. He's the chairman of the company and we're partners. And so he plays a very active role in that seat on the mostly on the negotiation and sales side of the company. He does a lot of travel. He's on his way. He's on a flight right now back from Vietnam. This is his 4th trip this summer. He really thrives in that environment far better than I do. And he told me, hey, I don't want to run a company. And I told him, I don't want you to run the company. And we both somehow found the seat that we want and that the other person doesn't want. And so we feel really privileged that way. And he's let me learn along the way. So that's the most notable of anyone. But then beyond that, we have a great executive team. We have individuals that have come over from companies like Skullcandy and Careloha and Jane.com, and people who are really instrumental in building these companies. I would say that's one thing that I feel very fortunate, because I can look around in our office. We're about 45 of us, and it just feels like we like to think of ourselves as the SEAL team mentality, where that's the goal, that's the North Stars. Can you get people who are perfect for their seat? And we're still on that journey, but we really feel like we've got a cool team put together, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah. And as I've watched from a bit of a distance, I've seen that happen because I see how well and how complementary, from my perspective, a lot of your team members are. You seem to have your roles and seem to go in there. I see Mark travel and come back and negotiate something and go travel again and set up a factory in Mexico or whatever. And then he's back discussing pricing with people. So it seems like you guys have really found a fit for your team. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell me about it. We want to jump into a breakout moment, a pivotal moment, and that's different for everybody, right? But we're creating a community and talking with a community about scaling CEOs. People are building from 0 to 1 or 1 to whatever it might be. And along the way, my philosophy, having worked with lots and lots of different clients that are in different stages, I think it really breaks down to everyone's on the same path, but you get to rearrange the order of the things that you do, right? Some people hit team issues sooner than others. Other people hit scale faster than others. Other people are innovating before or creating a new brand before others. But a lot of the same things, I think, from my perspective, happen on the path of all these scaling companies. And so I feel like there's a fantastic opportunity for people like you who have had your things that you've experienced to share an insight about something that might have happened, whether that's internally or whether that's externally, something that maybe presented an issue that you had to overcome. And really the insight that came from that maybe you go back to occasionally to repower up your process that you're doing. Is there a time that you think of building Shyft or in your career where you really did make that transition from this is what we were doing, something happened, and then we found like this new perspective, new insight, new reflection that really propelled us forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll share macro level example that has within it a few
Great.
examples that I'll tie together. But before I do that, as you were talking, an analogy came to my mind, and probably cliche, but I'm going to go for it anyway. It feels as though building a business is much like a tree growing.
Uh-huh.
You always want it to grow faster, and you always want it to be bigger and stronger. And we've all heard those analogies of the storms make the roots deeper, and
Yeah.
the kind of the age old thing. But it really is this interesting. You try in these instances when somebody asks you about your journey, and it may just be that my memory is terrible, but people ask you about your journey, and it's, my gosh, I feel like it's been an eternity. I don't know a life without this company, and every day has been its own chapter, and every day has presented 1,000 different days that I thought we were toast. And then you look back and it's, well, which one is the one? And do I even remember why that was so painful? Like, the pain is past, right? So you close that, and
Yeah.
but you're this tree that's growing, and it's, oh yeah, I remember when we were just whipping around in the wind and the storm, and we barely felt like we had any roots. And now I feel like we're, whatever, 8 years further, and we're deeper and stronger. So I would
I
say,
love that.
just,
Now you just have to pick out that one tree ring out of all the tree rings you've got and be
yeah,
like, oh yeah,
exactly.
that one's the one that's really meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I can. So we're in a unique position. Obviously, talk of any brand in the last 10 years will probably bring up COVID. They'll probably bring up the trade wars, any physical product brand, because it's been universally a challenge for all of us and continues to be. But for a supply chain company, I think there's a unique perspective on that. And I want to share that. So I think for the sake of time, I'll condense these stories. But for the first mention of this was quite interesting because I have a visceral memory of looking at my WeChat. It was the end of Chinese New Year, 2020. And at the time, we have offices in Vietnam and Mexico, in addition to China. But at the time, we were only set up in China. That's how we started our company. It was 100% Chinese manufacturing. Frank, who's still with us, was our first hire. He lives in Yiwu, China, and
and
works in
and
our office there.
and just for people who aren't familiar with Chinese New Year, what time of year is that?
Yeah, it's usually end of January or early February, and it lasts about a month. And it's this like black hole, right, for everybody, because having almost a full month off in the middle of needing product and other things takes a lot of planning and can be challenging. And for us, we just played Mario Kart the whole time because we didn't know what to do. Now it doesn't mean as much because we have all these other countries to manufacture in, but we were just like, we'll just hang. We don't have any money, so we're going to just burn our money for. And we were only a year and a half in or whatever. I get this text from Frank over there, and he says, "Hey, we might be a few days late back from Chinese New Year." And I thought, what's going on? He said, "There's a virus." And I just said, what on earth are we talking about? There's a cold or something. And now the employee, like, guys, we need to get back to work.
Yeah.
And he sent me a photo of the highway barricaded. And he said, I literally can't go back home. Like, the highways are barricaded. So it was this real apocalyptic feeling that we all kind of had our moments. But that was, for me, this seared into my memory, that photo of what is happening. Like, we never had
This is crazy.
this. We never had this in my
Because
lifetime.
yeah, and because Chinese New Year, people actually, because it's so long, they'll leave the town where they work and they'll go back home. So they're gone, and it's crazy transportation time, like
Yeah.
getting
That's
flights, getting
half of the
trains,
4
whatever.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're saying that Frank was like, "Hey, I can't go. Look, I can't even get back to the city where I need to be." Is
Exactly. We're all separated. We're all shut. And it was in its infancy. And this was prior to it becoming a buzz here in the US because it wasn't. It was a very isolated. We had employees that were in or around Hunan province where it started. And anyway, so that's where it all began. And instantly it became, okay, what's happening here? And fast forwarding a little bit to, again, condense the story, you can imagine a company that our entire existence is based on our ability to buy and import products out of China. There is no we didn't have some big armory full of supplies, so to speak. We were a very fledgling company. So it was day to day. And all of a sudden we couldn't do anything. And so it began there. And
Can I
uh,
interrupt there too? Because I think I'm glad you made that point because your existence relied on that, but your relationships with your customer, that was your relationship, was being able to get the product
yeah,
for them, right? And
yeah,
so It's
There is no
not
other
just like,
service.
not just like that's what you guys did, but that's what you guys did so that you could keep those relationships with your clients.
And that's tied to our economic model, right? So there
Yeah.
isn't a pay shift X amount per month on residual to be your, so it's tied to the unit cost of a product that can only be made when we deliver it. And so that was a real shock. And now I've actually skipped ahead in the story. I want to mention one thing. The prior to this, 6 months into our business, actually the first mountain of this kind of three peak sequence I'll talk about, it was the first trade war. And we were 6 months into our business again, solely in China. And President Trump, in his first term, came out and threw down these massive tariffs, all of a sudden making it nearly impossible for a lot of our customers to be able to import their products and survive on those margins. And again, another visceral memory, sitting in a room saying, what are we going to do? We finally have this big customer that's ordering, $1 million of books at the time, and we can't import them. And how long is this going to go and on? And so the first peak was this trade war. Again, for a company that exists on trade, you'd think, and is solely set up in China, you'd think, okay, you just lost your competitive edge and you're really in trouble. And we were, right? And we did for a moment. And so pausing there, and we thought the same in COVID. Okay, for a company that's set up solely in China, now the entire country is being shut down. We're really in trouble. We don't have anything. What else are we going to do? And then the third peak, and then I want to tie them together, is this recent trade war that started in January.
Yeah.
Just as you think you're getting through the long tail of the COVID situation, and I think everybody still blaming COVID for out of stock stuff. It's like you go to buy a car or something like, we don't have the color, it's COVID, it messed it all up or whatever. But we're finally getting through the long tail of that experience, and we all know the logistics and containers sitting in ports for 60 days.
Hey,
And you
Alex,
could see them.
I'm getting really choppy signal. I didn't hear that last stuff you said. Sorry.
Oh, is this any better?
This is better now.
Okay.
I'm
Tell
not
me
sure.
if not, and
I'll
can
let you know.
switch
I'll let you
audio.
know. I know there was something really exciting in there, so I didn't want to miss it.
So we all know the challenges of COVID, but specifically for supply chain, the world didn't know what the common individual didn't use that in their vernacular. Supply chain wasn't a word that we really used. And when I told people that's what I studied and that's what I do, they'd say, I don't even know what you're talking about. What does that mean? And generally you understand it's something in logistics, but
when COVID
COVID.
hit, I was talking to a friend the other day, COVID hit, and he's not in supply chain, he's in banking. And he said, I took my son, who was, I guess, probably 10 at the time. He said, I took my son to the grocery store because I wanted him to see the shelves were empty. And we all remember that. You go to like toilet paper, water, whatever the basics are. That's when most of us said, wait a second, what is this supply chain thing? Why are the shelves empty?
Yep. Car lots and shelves and all the things we all went through. And then supply chain became this day-to-day conversation. And so that happened. And then on the long tail of that, the next trade war, so to speak, started in January. And again, for us, we had just gotten, was it breaking out again?
It was breaking up again. Yeah.
Let me do a different setup here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. I hope it's not on my end.
Sorry about that, Jeff. Is this working any better?
Yeah, that works great. And I'll have my team just slice that middle piece out there.
Okay. So on the long tail of that, basically we're gaining momentum in many, and not just for the first time, obviously we've had some space between COVID, but we finally had ourselves repositioned, because what you have to keep in mind is that in each of these events, we pivoted. And that's what I'm going to get to. And every time you pivot and you think you've got the solution, then another thing changes and it's no longer the solution. And this new trade war happens, and now it's not just China, it's the entire world. So it starts with Mexico, and then it's Southeast Asia and Vietnam, and then it's China to 150%, and every single one of these levers, you can just imagine that you pull one and 5 other things fly up in our company that, okay, now these 5 things don't work anymore. They're not even viable solutions. But what do we do when you're playing this whack-a-mole game? So what I want to tie together with all of that is that each time that happened, we thought, this has completely upended what we thought our future was going to be. And at first it was disheartening, because you just think, my goodness, we put all this effort, the first trade war happened, and we set up an office in Vietnam. And it took 18 months to do that. And we're moving customers over there. And then COVID breaks out. And then it doesn't even matter if you're in China or if you're anywhere else, because all of Southeast Asia basically just got steamrolled by this
Yeah.
logistically by this pandemic. And so we're thinking, gosh, okay, so now those solutions don't work. Now everybody wants to be nearshore in Mexico and the US, and we've spent the last 3 years doing this thing. And so then during COVID, we said, we're going to set up an office in Mexico. As
Yeah.
we started, and then all of a sudden, 65, 70% of our business was now in Mexico. And you're not just moving, you're not just ordering out of catalogs. Like we're down there, 30 trips down there. We're setting up factories from scratch. We're moving millions of units down into these regions. We're helping getting regulatory certifications for import export. We're navigating cartel. We're doing all these things that you've never had to do in these. Every single region has its own set of rules. And so then we set up down there. And then what happens as soon as we have this stronghold in Mexico is that the presidency comes out and says, oh, okay, we're going to tariff Mexico at 25%. That happened in January. So we're thinking, my goodness, now we've got all these customers that are down there, but we've also got all these factories, and we've got this handful of other customers that we're about to close, and we've created the solution they want. We can save them money. We're taking them to Mexico, and now that's all invalidated. So what, do we pivot now back to Vietnam? So we pivot a lot of it back to Vietnam, and then Vietnam all of a sudden comes up as the highest tariff in Southeast Asia. Comes back at like 46.
This is whack-a-mole.
It's like crazy. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
And so the point is that every single time you change, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. There is some learnings here, but that's the preface to answer your question is those are the pivotal moments that if you ask for a skeleton of our company, if you ask for the tree rings or whatever the analogy, if you haven't picked up, I am notorious for terrible analogies and I use them way too much. So you're welcome. But anyway, those are the moments that you can see the DNA of our company throughout.
You've outlined it in a way that helps us understand exactly the impact that it's had. What strikes me here is what you didn't mention, and because the rest of the world, in addition to those 3 peaks you mentioned, the rest of the world, I think really remembers when the container ship got stuck in the canal and everything got shut down for a long time. Like to us, that was a huge event. To you, I'm sure that was a huge impactful event, but it wasn't even one of the 3 peaks. Didn't even hit your top 3 because you have these other top 3 that were even more impactful than the container ship being stuck and everything getting delayed for months at a time with the trucks in the store yards or whatever it was. That, like, you're dealing with the worst of the worst in a sense.
In that scenario, and it is funny, you look at like our president, Shannon Brown, she brought up the stat and was like, hey, in the last 100 years, there's been 6 or 5 like massive trade disruptions, and like 4 of them have happened in the last 7 years. So we start this trade company, and it's this wildly uncanny concentration of these challenges, but there is some magic to that as well.
And I want to get to that, but before I do, I'm really curious because you've got this great team. We talked about your dad and other team members. How do you keep your team together through all that? That's a lot of potential, not just like economic disruption, trade disruption, but maybe cultural disruption along the way. Was that something you had to navigate in addition to the rest of it?
Absolutely. And I think more than anything, it's the international offices because they see their book of business swing to another region. Yeah, we're all on the same team, but naturally you worry, man, we used to do all these millions of units down here and now we're doing a fraction of that. And now we're shifting it to our Vietnam team and then to our China team is 3 people. Vietnam's almost 20 now. We started the company in China, right? And so we've always had to reassure that team of, hey guys, hold in there with us because the idea here is certainly we got to play whack-a-mole, but we don't have to retreat. And we will set up more camps, but we're not leaving the camps we have. There's a reason to have them, and just trust us that there's a bigger plan and you're stable, and you can't always hang on to everybody in every circumstance, and that's not easy. But by and large, we have been successful in keeping the company culture together just through messaging and helping them understand the larger strategy and to zoom out of the present pain and to remind them that it will pass and that we will return in some form to a former situation.
Yeah. And I know you're big on relationships and you're very good at that. And so I really wanted to hear your insight on that. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
So getting back to these 3 peaks, these 3 problems, what was your thought process to navigate it? Was there a point where you're like, I don't know, we can do this. Like did you feel like you were getting better with each problem? Or did you feel like, man, this is like pounding me down further? What was your reaction?
I mean, it's so interesting, and I could talk for longer than you want me to on this topics, but I think the first reactions early on were very whiplash, reactive, emotional. You're just wondering, okay, this is it. I guess the experiment's over. And it really is. It's the big moments, but also the daily moments that we've all been through, whether it's in business or other parts of our lives that give you kind of an armor. I can see a very stark difference in the person that I am now and the person that I was when the first trade war happened, because this time around I was annoyed, but it didn't waver my belief in the future even slightly. And it's not
Is that
because I
because
had
you've,
all the answers. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just wondering, is that because you've been there and you've seen it?
Yeah,
Hey, I've done
exactly.
this.
That's exactly it.
I talk with a lot of innovators, and I'm like, hey, listen, because I see them at the very beginning of the stages, and I see some that are just like ignorantly blissful moving forward, and I see others that are more cautious. And I see some that are just so afraid that they just I don't even know where to start. And I feel like whether, and this might apply to you, whether it's forced or whether it's willful, action really is the thing. Having taken action, either because you have to or because you decide to, taking that action, repeating that action, that just gets you comfortable to know, hey, I've managed this before, I can do it again. Or I know sometimes we don't even know what the answer is going to be, but we know if I take action, I'm going to get through this. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know by taking action, that thing I was fearing, I'm going to know what the answer is sooner than later. So
Totally.
action versus fear is a kind of a concept for me that I like to explore.
That's exactly it. Yeah, action, and that has been kind of moments of inspiration throughout is, hey, get up and get something done. Stop sitting here worrying about it, right? You're going to feel better about this if you just keep moving and you keep acting. And I think that is simple, but unbelievably powerful. And I think you're spot on with that. But yeah, there certainly is this mentality that you get a little bit of a callus to, where you say, okay, first time I freaked out, second time I freaked out. And you fast forward and then you say, okay, trade war, that's aggravating. We did all this work, but you immediately go into a different mode. You immediately go into a solution mode, into an opportunity mode. And somebody I really admire, a close friend of mine who runs a successful company, he once told me early on, he just said, it's like a pendulum, but you got to stay in the middle. Don't let yourself get too pulled either way. You're leading a company. Even on the high side, don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. Don't think I've got the big sale, we're on fire, we could never fail. Celebrate your wins, but celebrate them quickly and get back to work. Let them fill your cup, but don't let them blow you away. And then on the negative side, if you're a leader and you can't have resilience to this side of it, your company, it's like they see you and they see when your mood's off. They know immediately. People come up to me like, you're off today. Like, yeah, you're right, I'm off today. And it shifts, not because you're so important, but because if they don't think that you believe, it's really dangerous, because things that they don't know, and they know that. So you have to do your best. And I'm not certainly the example of this, but I know that it's true from experience that when you can stay in the middle, you can ground people around you. And others do that for me, probably more often than I do for them. But it's an important principle.
Yeah, I love that. I do think I've used the bicycle analogy. Like when you're riding, you don't want to fall over this way, you don't want to fall over this way, but there's this natural sway. Nobody is perfectly upright all the time down the trail. It's, hey, bend and lean and keep bike body separation if you're part of the NICA Kids Mountain Biking Leagues, which your kids should do when they're that age. It's fantastic. But that bike, I think the pendulum, the same thing. Your middle probably means middle, as you need to be in the middle, moving, but not falling to those extremes. I like that.
Well, and there's a statement, I think it's Alexis Poppies. I don't know if I've said her name right, but she was an Olympic athlete, and her coach told her, he said that life runs in the game of thirds. And what that means is that a third of if you're chasing something meaningful, something ambitious, in the game of life, you'll have a third of the days that you feel on top of the world, a third of the days that you feel in the doldrums and down, and you'll have a third of the days that are just neither here nor there. And as long as that ratio is true, trust that you're on track and you're just adding to that bucket, and the next one will come. And if you unlock that and you say today is just an okay day, that's great, because that's one in my tally in the okay bucket day. And that means that I have some great days up ahead. Or if you're in the negative, you have to stay calm and say, I'm just filling up I'm doing my third. I have to pay these dues so that I can experience the third over here. And for me and my wife, and both in business and in life, that's a rule it's really changed things for our perspective.
I love that. I thought we were having Alec Burdge, the CEO, on today. We also have Alec Burdge, the CEO coach, on today.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great rule. So how'd you come out of this then? What was the end result for you and your team? Or maybe you're still in the middle of it, right? Trade wars are still ongoing. But what are some of the wins that you've been able to see along the way to get you into that, that top third for those days?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because you're right. Every single day, this morning, I read something, the de minimis for parcels under $800 is eliminated, which is going to disrupt a lot of things. Yesterday, India's 50% tariff went into place. So every day is a changing landscape. But the way we've gotten through it, and this is what I brought the team together and I said, hey guys, we have an amazing opportunity. This last time, the trade war, I'm finally learning. This last January, I brought everyone together and we were actually having what we call a sprint week, where we fly people in and we do 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We turn off our computers basically to the outside world the whole week and we work on the business. We do it every 6 months. And we were doing a sprint week, so it was good timing. And we had this trade situation and we all thought Vietnam was going to be zero and all these customers were going to close and on. And it went the opposite way. And in that moment, it was, oh my gosh, the entire year is again upended. The entire year. And this is a big year for us to do certain things that are really important. And all of it got up in a second. And I got the team together and I said, listen, every single important thing that's ever happened to this company happened on the back of something like this. And you go through the beginning of the company and you go through when we bootstrapped the company with no money, selling hoverboards on the side of the road. And it almost makes me emotional. You just think about these moments and you say, this is what made us who we are. If we didn't have these, we wouldn't have an office in Vietnam. If we didn't have the COVID, we wouldn't have an office in Mexico. If we didn't have this trade war, we're not going to have the next evolution that will make us even greater beyond that. And so rather than us begrudge this and bemoan this situation, let's be on top of it. Let's embrace it and let's look for the opportunity. And a saying that I love is that when you have these thoughts of fear, number one, think, what if they don't happen? What if it doesn't upend everything? What if it doesn't happen? What if it turns out? And then number two, think, if it does happen, why is that going to be an advantage for me? And that's not my quote, that's somebody else's, but that's the advantage that we said, let's do that. And so immediately we started looking for open doors. We started saying, this could accelerate this AI technology that we want to release. This could, we got this one customer that got turned off because of this, but now this actually flips the script and and even as recent as yesterday, I'm on the phone with my dad and he said, man, I wish that X, Y, and Z would happen again because this customer would really just go through the roof. And I said, yeah, but if that customer went through the roof, then this other customer that's just as big is going to go through the floor because it's equal and inverse. But you can see we're putting camps up. And so I guess the advice I would leave, if it's worth anything, is just that if we can, together as teams and as leadership, if we can take that approach and say, the people who thrive are the people who can say, where's the opportunity in this? And let us be the people who sell the shovels in the gold rush. Let us be the people who build the shelters in the storm. Whatever it is, that based on your industry, whether it's opportunity or it's protection or it's whatever, there's something there that was just uncovered in the wake of this storm. And you can be the one to resolve it. And so I think that's my lesson. And that's what ties these peaks together. And we'll still have our off days, but I think it's given us a buoy and it's enabled us to feel like our cup is full, even when times are not good. And in all intensive, or in the measures of what you would maybe formally measure things as, it can be okay.
That's such practical advice because everybody's going through it, whether we see it on social media or whether they share it in their presentations on the stage. Everybody's going through it. And it's just reality that we have to figure it out. And if we don't know how to navigate the downs, then we probably also don't know how to navigate the ups, and we're not going to get down the road as far as we can. If I could maybe reword a little bit what you're saying, only because to put it in an additional perspective, I think what you're doing, and maybe you would call it the same thing, maybe you call it something different. I think what you're doing is you're just taking every situation, you're being very deliberate and informed with how you create strategy and how you execute strategy, because strategy is the way that we leverage bad opportunities or good opportunities or any opportunities in the environment that we're sitting in to stay in that leadership position in our industry. And if you're not doing that, you might be there for a moment, but you're not in control of staying there if you're not able to navigate the fluidity of the environment you're in. So that's what I think. I think what you described is just a practical lesson in business strategy for people.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to position that. And I agree.
I've got one more question for you. I know we've been here for a bit and I really appreciate your time. I'm curious, I think I might know who you would say, but is there somebody in your career that you've looked at as a kind of a spotlight breakout CEO or a mentor? Who are one or two of those people in your network that inspire you and keep you, maybe you got relationships with them, maybe you see them from a distance, but who are those inspirational CEO figures and CEO mentors that you look up to?
Yeah, the first one is Colby Bauer, Thread. He and
Yeah.
I have become close friends, and we've had the privilege of working closely with Thread for almost the entirety of our kind of existence as a business. But Colby is there are many things. He's the one who had the pendulum analogy that I told you about. There are many things, but if I were to sum it up, the thing that makes Colby special as a leader is that he has this ability to zone in on people and make them feel like they are the most important part of his reason to be wherever he is. And I think that's powerful in his business and out. And it's very rare that you find someone that does that in a genuine way. We're all trying our best, but it really comes from the right place with him. But then on top of that, obviously, he's a brilliant business innovator and creator and strategist. And so I really admire him, and I have often looked to him for advice and insights. I would say, of course, my father. And again, our relationship as father-son has always been really positive and special. But to be business partners with somebody and to shoulder the weight of a company together and in a very ongoing way is pretty special, and it bonds you in a special way, and you understand each other and learn to embrace each other. And so obviously he's very gifted. He's far more, and he's got just a much higher level of sheer intelligence than I do. So I look up to him in many ways. So those are the two that come to mind, but there are a lot. I look around, I think we're privileged to live in a place where leadership is abundant. And so it's a good place for those who want to try this road of entrepreneurship. I always encourage them to do so because there's plenty of people who will help you, just like they have for me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that and shouting out a few great people. I know Mark and have seen him. He is a brilliant man. I don't know Colby as well, but coming with a referral like that from you, he's a solid guy. I'm certain of it. Thank you, Alex, for coming on the show, spending some time with us, sharing some of your insights, some of your experiences, wisdom even. It's been great fun having you. And for the rest of our audience, thank you so much for joining us on the Breakout CEO podcast today. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you, Jeff.